Time now for Space Watch. Brad Tucker, astrophysicist and cosmologist at ANU, joins me here in the studio. Thanks for your time.
No worries.
Now, we've got OneWeb launching 34 satellites. It wants 640 by 2021. My first question is, aren't we a bit full up there? We've been talking about space junk and collisions recently. How's this going to go?
So look, yes, in short, it is starting to get pretty full. And this is kind of one of the interesting things. So, they're proposing, you can see here, to go about 1,200 kilometers, what we call this low Earth orbit. They want to deploy ultimately 640 satellites in kind of like formation flying, so that as they're orbiting around, they cover essentially everywhere on the Earth with global continuous internet coverage. So similar to, as we talked about, SpaceX's Starlink thing. So, we can see these ideas are not just fanciful reality, they're going up and going up today.
It's very expensive, presumably. What's the payoff? I mean, now you can get internet if you're in the Arctic or the middle of the outback in Australia. How would you get it? How are they making money?
So, the idea is, instead of paying for the infrastructure and the towers and plans on that, right, you say, all right, well, instead of being X mobile phone company and I use their towers and roaming, I use X satellite company. There's no roaming. Everywhere I get that continuous coverage as a plan. And so, what you're going to start seeing now is not the competition for who has the best mobile phone tower network here on the ground, who has the best satellite coverage here, right. So you have the most continuous and high bandwidth coverage.
So you'd just do calls through the internet. So if you had if this really takes off and all this go up, you might have a $50 a month contract with SpaceX, with OneWeb.
Yep.
And then
SpaceX,
SpaceX. And you'd get your internet, you'd make your calls through it, you'd do your text through it, everything where you are in the world.
Everywhere in the world, that's right. So when you're in the middle of the ocean, you can make a call.
Wow.
So, and this is becoming the game changer here. But as you said, a lot of them are going up, so we do have to worry about it getting too crowded to prevent those crashes, as we've talked about.
So what happens to phone companies?
It's going to be a challenge to the market. This is the challenger, and as you said, expensive.
Yeah.
It's actually not as expensive as one may think. Instead of building towers all across a country, even, and expensive infrastructure. And
you get that global coverage, of course, as well. So if this comes in, what would the speeds be like?
So it's and this is where they're interested, because what they're saying is they're going to go a little bit higher up with powerful receivers, so you can get good speeds. SpaceX wants to get a little bit lower, but more of them. Most people expect you should be able to get 4G, LTE. They're already embedding 5G networks on there.
Right.
And as we upgrade the technology, we can upgrade the satellite transmission faster here on the ground. So as fast, if not faster, than we're currently getting on wired networks almost.
Wow, okay. That's it.
And so, the next batch will go up probably today.
So when will that be a reality? By 2021?
When they want to have their full network online. So, they have to launch it in batches. So do they have, low coverage, small coverage? I don't know. It's a race. Who's the first?
But so in a couple of years, we could be walking around and, who are you with? Oh, yeah, I'm with SpaceX now.
Yeah.
In Australia.
But you can have that conversation in the Arctic, or as you said, in the middle of Central Australia.
Telstra must be worried.
Well, look, we'll have to see how the companies on the ground adapt. They do have their own satellites, and it's a challenge to it of what it means. Emerging technologies is definitely something we have to look at.
You've blown my mind today, Brad Tucker, if you can't tell. There's another mission to study the Sun, the Solar Orbiter, launching on Sunday. What does it want to find out?
So look, we've been talking a lot about the Sun here, and we saw that first image, as we talked about last week, of the surface. Solar Orbiter, which is this big craft right here, really wants to look at the outside, kind of like the atmosphere of the Sun. Now, there's currently another probe doing it, and we have one that's 20 years old that's about to be retired. So instead, it's kind of like looking directly at you, but you're so bright and you're so great to look at, I can't look too much at you, so I want to look around you.
So when we had the Sun up there, you might focus just to the right of it and see what's coming off.
Exactly. So, and it's pretty much this, right? As the Sun emits all this material, blows through space, and it hits our protective bubble here on Earth, we want to see these waves as they're leaving the Sun, traveling through space for early solar warning systems,
right.
But also understanding the content. So, we want to see these eruptions in real time.
So because solar flares can be quite dangerous to Australia, right? They can knock out all sorts of technology. There's even a fear at one point, if something came without warning, billions could be left without power. They want to be able to know when that's coming, and what do they do then? Shut down systems?
That's right, exactly. And this has happened. And in 1989, a solar storm wiped out power in Quebec in Canada for about 4 weeks, and it created about $2 billion worth of damage. These are not abstract ideas. You get a big solar flare, you can wipe out the entire electrical network of an entire country.
But at that point, it just knocked out one part. It's a small sort of targeted one. The fear is here's a big one coming. It'll knock out presumably only half the world.
Yeah, it's never going to hit the entire world, so a patch. You just don't want it to be your patch. Yeah. But if we know it's coming, we can go into safe mode of things, right? You know, if you literally turn electronics off and store them, you won't get that charge.
There'd be mass warnings, turn everything
exactly.
off.
So, but it's all about warning system.
Would it also help us on knowing the cycle of the sun, the sort of minimums and maximums that are spoken about? Because it's the research on that is a little bit sort of the contestability around it.
It is. So, you know, there's an 11-year solar cycle that we know, and we're rarely at a big minimum. But there's, you know, daily fluctuations. You know, kind of imagine we have winter and summer here, but the amount of storms changes per year. So you want to know the short-term variations and the long-term variations here, but we need up close.
All right, I'm 2 out of 2 so far, right behind both of these. Finally, radio telescopes in Australia. We've got astronomers. You're describing they're seeing spinning stars twist the fabric of space.
I know, it's mind-blowing. I think this should be mind-blowing. So we have a pulsar and a white dwarf orbiting around each other. Now, these are very massive, small objects. The pulsar, it's only about the size of a city, literally 20 kilometers there. And as they're spinning around, their gravity is actually dragging it down. So it's kind of like I'm moving my hands here. Well, I actually feel the wind slightly being created by my hand spinning around. It actually essentially created space to be dragged and sloshed around as it was moving. So we talk about what is the nature of space, and it's this giant invisible sheet, essentially. This disturbed it and changed it and warped it.
I'm going to sound bad. I like the other two more.
Well, you know, they're more practical, I guess.
This isn't going to give me internet coverage, you know.
It's not, but if we could potentially understand the nature of space and how gravity can change it, well, then we can actually potentially use gravity as a way of force of accelerating things. We can understand how it actually affects time and speeds.
In space, so this might give us more of a capability to go further in space.
That's right. And in fact, about 2 decades ago, NASA launched this probe that measured the small effect around the Earth as it was spinning. So now we're detecting on larger scales across it, using a 50-year-old telescope in central New South Wales.
Do you watch space movies and go, no, that couldn't happen, that's impossible?
Yeah, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think space movies need that great mixture between aspiration and realism.
Right.
If you're so accurate, then you don't get excited about what might be. But if it's so out there, you need to find that right balance.
So I shouldn't panic if I see you walking into a cinema to see a space film. You won't be standing up and
I'm going boo. No, it depends who appears on screen, I'll tell you that.
Brad Tucker, always appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks.